I'm Shivani Gupta. I'm obsessed with small to medium businesses growing. As business owners, we take so much risk and we want to make sure it's worth it. I believe one of the best presents you can give yourself as a business owner is to be able to learn how to scale your people, your profit, and your processes. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Grow Your Business podcast. I'm Shivani Gupta. I'm your host. I want to take on a particular topic that's been talked about so much in the last 2 years. As we navigated through COVID, this whole notion of virtual meetings and people missing the in-person, some organizations now forcing their people to come back, and others saying as a result of that, we are going to lose a lot of our key talent. So there's debate ongoing in terms of virtual meetings. Are they as good as face-to-face meetings? And what I wanted to address today is perhaps some ways that we can get more productivity out of our virtual meetings. I believe virtual meetings are here to stay. I believe working from home and working from anywhere is here to stay. The percentage and the composition of that, whether it's 80-20, 60-40, whatever the breakup is based on your teams, based on your business, based on your organization, based on whether you're frontline or not so, will vary a lot. So I wanted to share with you some tips that I've come across in talking to a bunch of clients, and I wanted to just share that with you in the hope that it enhances perhaps some things that you're already doing well and to do it a little bit better, or perhaps one of the things that I share with you, you haven't done at all, and you might be able to create better productivity out of your virtual meetings. So let's talk about this. And some of these are not just related to virtual meetings. Like the first one I'm going to talk about is setting clear objectives. Clear objectives out of any meeting has been something that's been talked about for years and years and years. If we don't have a clear objective or objectives for the meeting, why are we getting together in the first place? But because we have more chance of disengagement on virtual meetings, because some people don't have their cameras on and other, a whole heap of other things are happening when we are not in the workplace environment, for some people, it's even more so important to set clear objectives for virtual meetings. So you want to get really clear what the purpose is of that particular meeting or the intention of that meeting and what the goals are of that meeting in advance. You want people to know that, that context in terms of what it is that you're trying to create and what you're going to do. You always want to have an agenda. In fact, there are some meetings I will not attend unless there's an agenda. Now, that agenda may be 5 dot points. It doesn't need to be a big, extensive document over 5 pages, but you want to know the topics that are going to be discussed so that you can at least have thought through or maybe written and jotted down a few points that you are going to bring up as part of that particular agenda item. And what that does is it lets everybody know what is there to expect and how to basically be able to make most, use of that. The second thing I want to talk about is choosing the right technology. There's been a lot of debate about what's safe, what's unsafe. Some people prefer Zoom, some people prefer Teams, some people prefer other platforms. It really is irrelevant in terms of which platform you choose, but that platform has to meet and suit your needs. Don't go with the fad. Make sure that you've got platforms that are working. And if you've been on a platform for the last couple of years, for example, and it's not working for you, then find out a platform that might be better suited. And the key thing in technology is making sure that everybody has got access to it. One of the things that I've seen is that people have access to this technology, but some people are unfamiliar in terms of how to use it. And after they've been using it and their teams have been using it for virtual meetings for many weeks or months, they feel really quite silly or stupid asking for some support around it. So even perhaps running how to maximize your virtual meetings, perhaps your IT person or somebody with a technology background could talk about some hacks and some simple ways of how to use that. I've been in so many virtual meetings over the last 2 years where some people didn't know how to change their name to let them know which region they were representing or which company they were representing. They didn't know how to put their hand up on a Zoom call. There are so many people, despite it being around now for a long time, that feel silly asking for help. So make sure that whatever technology you have, you do offer some ongoing support and some hacks so that everybody knows and familiarize themselves with technology, irrespective of how long you've been using it. The other thing around virtual meetings to get more productivity is you want to schedule wisely. What do I mean with that? When you've got meetings that are happening across different time zones, I sit on some global meetings and I coach some people globally. It is so important that these meetings aren't at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. The best big probably examples where I've seen that from virtual meetings is Sometimes it feels like that you're doubling up by having two different time zones. So you might have an AM and a PM option, and it allows people to join one or the other option. Now, some people say, but Shivani, that's doubling up. Yes, it's doubling up, but if more than half your people can't attend because it's at some ridiculous time in the middle of the night or super early in the morning, which does not work for other people, you're better off running it twice, particularly for really important meetings where you are making some decisions, whether you're disseminating some really, really important information. And just also making sure, I see so many people that say to me now, so many of my clients will say, Shivani, it's funny, I work from home 2 days a week, but my diary is busier than ever. Sometimes I don't even leave my desk. That is not good. Because when we had physical meetings, we would move from room to room. We would have an opportunity to move away from our desks. But sometimes we're just going back to back in so many Zoom meetings that it is actually counterproductive. So we want to make sure that if we've got meetings, we've got, at least a 10-minute break in between meetings, ideally 15, where you can go up, grab yourself some water or tea or coffee, go to the bathroom, get your head reset for the next meeting from a productivity point, maybe have a stretch in between. So just making sure that you schedule things that have got some gaps in there, particularly when you've got access to other people's calendars. The next thing I want to talk about is scheduling wisely. Well, what do I mean by that? It's, I guess, just, again, following up some of those actions. I also want to talk about preparing and testing in advance. Well, what do I mean by that? Just making sure that your equipment works. I spent a fair bit of time doing virtual keynote presentations to different parts of the world, and I do not ever arrive as I'm about to present. So I always talk to the organisers and ensure that somewhere between 15 and up to 45 minutes before, I can do a test, I can log in, I can share my slides, people can see me, I know that the Wi-Fi, everything at their end is working, and I want to make sure that the microphone is working, just everything is working in terms of that. And if there's any documents or presentations, just always doing a test and making sure that that works. It only takes 2 or 3 minutes, but the worst thing is when you rock up to a meeting and there's a lot of people in that virtual meeting and your slides don't work, or somebody else's technology doesn't work, and you feel like that there is a waste of time. The other way, and again, this is not new to virtual meetings, but it comes in very handy in ensuring that people are engaged, is making sure that people have roles. What do I mean by that? Having sure that there is a facilitator. That doesn't always need to be the leader or the CEO or the founder of the business. It can often be somebody that's been allocated that role to facilitate, excuse me, and making sure that they are able to keep the meeting on track. The other really important roles, if you have no other roles, the second role would be somebody that's a timekeeper. So you've got your agenda, you've allocated some times to the agenda. Say, for example, you've got 45 minutes, and at the 30 or 40-minute mark, the timekeeper just says, by the way, we've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or puts it into the chat box, whatever platform you're using. Making sure that they keep that. There's nothing worse than having a really big strategic discussion point at the end and the meeting has run out of time. And again, that is not just to virtual meetings, but virtual meetings, sometimes we lose the track of time, not knowing that we've got another meeting coming up, and we'll extend it again, then not have those breaks. The next thing I want to talk about is establishing some ground rules or norms in terms of what's really important. It's still really important to set some ground rules. So, for example, muting microphones if you're not speaking, using video. So there are some organisations and teams now that are saying, actually, unless your video is on, we are going to consider you to be absent, so that you are not distracted, you are not disengaged, and people can see if you've got 7 other, Google parts open, that you are actually distracted doing emails or whatever it is that you're doing. The next thing I want to talk about is engaging the participants. So one of the best ways that I've seen is having people put their hand up physically, giving a thumbs up, being able to get some engagement, and that engagement is no different. I know that one of the things that I've learned over the years as a keynote presenter is that we need to engage people every 7 minutes. So if I have a 50-minute presentation, every 7 minutes I need to get my audience to do something so that there is some engagement in terms of what they do. It's also really important that if you've got some polls or you've got breakout rooms, there's so many different ways to be able to engage people and ensure that their focus is on that particular meeting. The next way to actually get more productive virtual meetings is to manage time effectively. Now, I talked about having a timekeeper, but this is going into a little bit more detail than that. So what I mean by that is you want to stick to the agenda. If people start to speak about other options and other agenda items, the role of the facilitator is to say, I'm going to put that in a parking lot, or can we just park that for now? Whatever language you want to use that you use in your teams and your business, and ensuring that we don't go off topic. That allows us to stay on time, that makes sure that people feel like that discussion and that meeting was really valuable because we got through the agenda items. Now, if you have got more time at the end of that, then come back to that point. If you don't have time, then let people know what will be done. So, for example, you might say that you're going to pick up that particular topic, which is really important, into another agenda and go from there. The second last thing that I want to talk about virtual meetings, and this is no different to face-to-face meetings, but it is so important to have actions written down. Again, I like having actions that are dot points or one numbered, and they're very simple and often only 3 to 5 things, key things that come out of that, and share those meeting notes promptly. Don't leave that. Make sure that people are aware of their accountability and in there, so they've got in their diaries and they can mark in there what it is that they need to do between then and the next discussion that might be having on that particular agenda item. And the last thing that is so important that we don't do very well in face-to-face, but is super important in virtual meetings, is to be able to seek some feedback. So after the meeting, you can do the poll survey. A lot of virtual meetings I now do, it tells me to identify who I was, or if I don't want to, giving some feedback on that and looking at that data and saying, what are some of the things we could improve? Some people might say, look, the meeting went too long. Right, how can we chunk that down? Some people might say that the presentation slides didn't work out. Well, how can we use technology or use less slides? So use that feedback to refine your virtual meeting process in terms of what you do. As I said at the start of this particular podcast, virtual meetings are here to stay. We have to continue to work on how we can make them more productive and get more out of our people and our time, so that we are able to grow our businesses as a way of being able to run really highly productive virtual meetings. Thanks for tuning in. Always appreciate it. And it would be fantastic if you have an opportunity to be able to rate and review this podcast on Apple. I'm Shivani Gupta, and you've been listening to the Grow Your Business podcast. I hope you got one idea that you can think about or perhaps even implement straight away in your business. Thank you for listening. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Ask Shivani. Remember, I call it Ask Shivani, so please send me your questions that I can address in this podcast for you. And I would also so appreciate if you went to the Apple Podcast to rate and review this podcast.